Speaking of my incredible board members, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to meet another one here in just a moment if you haven't met him already. He's been quite talkative with everybody throughout the conference, so I'm sure you've heard of him once or twice. Our next speaker is a really, really great friend of mine. Before we even started the Mandela Effect conference, me and this guy used to do collaboration work from time to time. I always make the joke, and it's not really a joke. We had a show together on another YouTuber's channel. I can already see him smiling, knows what's coming. We had a 6-hour conversation, ladies and gentlemen, about a tree. That's right. The conversation, does a tree make a sound if it falls in the woods? We really went deep into the philosophical jungles on that. It was incredible. And, you know, like I said, he later would become one of my very, very close teammates, work members, and, of course, a wonderful friend, Shane C. Robinson, a.k.a. Shane Cornell. There we go. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. I think you got some fans.
Yeah, sounds like it. Thank you.
Seems like they've heard of you once or twice. Is an artist, musician, researcher, co-author of Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe. Creator and host of the YouTube channel Unbiased and On the Fence. Currently on the board of the International Mandela Effect Conference and conducting private one-on-one Beyond Quantum Healing sessions for clients online. After a lifelong journey of searching for deeper truths to the meaning of life, Shane felt as if this journey had finally come to a dead end, and that there was no answers that could ever satisfy the basic yet fundamental questions he had about our existence here on Earth. This would ultimately lead to what Shane considers his dark night of the soul in late 2016. By February 2017, Shane decided to start a YouTube channel, Unbiased and On the Fence, to explore different worldviews and ideas held by others. Not long after starting the channel, Shane realized the Mandela Effect was a very real phenomenon. This triggered a huge awakening for Shane and many of the viewers of his YouTube channel. After extensive research into the possible causes of the Mandela Effect, Shane felt no explanation fit as well as the consideration that this was a supernatural event caused by some benevolent force or agency trying to awaken humanity without violating free will. This idea was confirmed when he read the book 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth by Dolores Cannon. In 2019, Shane, along with Eileen Colts, Paulo Pinto, and Vanessa VA, co-authored the book Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe. Shane's visual art can be found under the name Shane Robinson, and his work as a recording artist and producer can be found under Shane Cornell. Shane lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma with his wife of 30 years, 5 children, and 2 grandchildren. Shane considers himself a light worker with a primary mission of helping raise human consciousness to a more aware, peaceful, loving, harmonious Christ consciousness. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor, it is my pleasure to introduce my longtime friend, Shane Robinson.
All right. Well, you covered like half of my talk already. But. So I want to start with all of us taking a deep breath together. I believe a lot in heart-mind coherence and that we're all connected energetically. So the big sigh of relief, feels good. And with that, we connect our heart energy and we could become more open to really the views of everybody, which is really what my journey has been about, is really unbiased and on the fence, is really enjoying talking to other people and really seeing their point of view. Because if we had, say, an alien plop down on the planet, think of how you would not try to change them into being an earthling, right? You'd be like, what is it like on your planet? What is it like, you know, how do you eat? How do you do all these basic things? So it's kind of like that with people's awakening journey. You know, we all have a very unique journey. Just like our fingerprints and our retinas and all of that have a very uniqueness. And of course, we all have similarities, but I believe that the journey is all very much individual. And I also believe that we all have our different departments. So I'm not part of any kind of organized religion, but I was raised as a Christian. My grandparents my grandpa was a pastor, so my mom was a preacher's kid, and she was a traveling evangelist. And so growing up, we'd go to a lot of tent revivals, and my sister and I would go, and we would, join in with the praise and worship. And we went to the exciting ones with light language, speaking in tongues, and the Holy Spirit moving. So I thought that was the only place to find that growing up, but I very much did feel the Holy Spirit and some divine force that would move through us when we all gathered together to, worship God and things like that. And I still feel it now. I went and visited my sister. She's a pastor. She invited me for Easter, and I went in there, and it was just like it was, and I was like, I saw it in a whole new way. I was like, wow, they're doing it. They've got their own way they're doing it, but they're tapping into that wonderful energy. They're coming together in a community type way, and they're connecting together. And I saw it in a whole new light as an outsider for the first time, and it was really beautiful. I'm like, oh, they've got it figured out. That's their thing, that's their road, and I really welcome that, So I saw that in a whole new way that I hadn't since I'd actually left the church, because you do have that tendency to feel like, oh, well, that was the wrong way. And it might not have been the right way for me in the direction I was going, but it's very much the way it is for a lot of people. Whoop, went the wrong way. Of course, you mentioned Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe. It's a 4-part book. We all took parts in it. Eileen Coates, Paulo Pinto, myself, and Vanessa VA. We got any Vanessa VA fans out there? Just a shout out for her. There you go, Vanessa. Okay, I wanted to take a moment to remember Eileen Coates. Eileen Coates was a really good friend of mine. We did tons of shows together. She led tons of group meditations. She had tons of great stories, and just really a joy to be around and to know. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity of calling her a friend. It's been almost 2 years since she passed away, and she was a presenter at the second annual. So I wanted to, remember Eileen. Thank you. As well as all of our other people. I know we've lost other people, so we want to remember everyone we lost personally and in the community as well. I wanted to start with this cool story that actually a few people here know because they were with me a month ago. But we met in New Mexico, in Taos, New Mexico, and we were, just traveling around, visiting different areas, and we actually gathered to, it was a CE5 event, so that's kind of what brought us all together. But we had fun while we were there. We visited this ashram, and afterwards we went over to eat at that area, and we run into this guy. Now the funny thing is, this guy right here was at the grocery store in front of my daughter and I like 2 days before this. So when I saw him, I'm like, are you stalking us? What are you, and I was joking around with him or whatever, but it was just, after I share this story, you'll see why from his point of view, it was probably really weird, but from my point of view, it felt like the Truman Show a little bit, like, wait a minute, is that another character playing a different role over here? So I go in, and someone in our group says, Shane, come, you got to tell this guy about the Mandela Effect, So I'm like, oh yeah, sure. So I'm like walking over to him, like kind of sizing him up a little bit, like we're gonna have to go with the JFK with this guy, right? It's gonna get him. I just felt it, And I went up to him, and I'm like, do you remember the Abraham Zapruder film? And he says, are you talking about the black and white JFK assassination film? Black and white? I'm like, exactly what I'm talking about. And of course I felt that in my heart, just the way you feel when somebody remembers something that no longer exists that way, and you just feel that resonance with them. So it started with that, and then I was like, well, how many people do you remember in the car? And he starts off with, well, there was a Secret Service agent that was kind of on the back. And I'm like, no, just like in the car. He goes, oh, well, it was just JFK and Jackie next to him and Governor Connolly and the Secret Service agent driving, right? I'm like, not anymore, but that's how we all remember it. So of course I showed him. We looked it up. That's actually his face as he thought I was pulling his leg and telling him all this. My son was there. He snapped this shot, and you can see he's like completely like, is this guy serious? He's looking at his phone. He's seeing I'm right, and he's looking back up like, where am I? So I wanted to share this because, early on, I kind of thought we'd have this sort of response from everybody. I thought everybody I talked to would be like this guy, but it isn't like that at all, is it? It's a very small group of people that seem to, see it. Like, some people will, fiddle with their phones or move on or do something else, and it's just, or, a fire truck go by, it's just kind of weird the way distractions are when you're trying to tell people sometimes. But I feel like it's a good thing. I don't feel like, something stopped me. I feel like, oh, maybe it's not their time to rock their world, right? Because if you see it and it's not your time, it could just be a little too early for you, because it is a lot. So this is the picture that I photoshopped. I took this one and I made it that one, and I actually did it on my channel. I sped it up, of course, but you can see I photoshopped the old version, or got the old version that we remember out of the newer version. But it was a couple months later, somebody sent me a link, and they were like, somebody found this picture. And they sent it to me, and this guy has this picture. Some of you might remember this video, but he pulls it out. He's like, this was like my dad or my grandpa's picture, and it's all framed. It looks old, and he's showing this residue of the original car. So he holds it up to the camera, and I'm looking. It's my picture. He took my picture, printed it out, went somewhere, and got the frame, and an old frame probably at a garage sale or something, and tried to pass it off as residue. So, there's a lot of that going around, which is disinfo. When I did it to where you can see it, but someone still took my screen capture and printed it out to, create fake residue. So when I started my presentation, I got to tell you, it was all, I had it all figured out and everything. And then I ran through it and checked the time, because I'm not used to having to stop at a certain time. So I ran through it, and I was a little bit short. And so I went back, and I was going to take some things out, but I actually started hearing, you need to add some things in there, and I was already short on time, so I kept adding things in there. And then it finally got to the point where I was like, well, what about all this other stuff? I'm like, oh, no, you don't need all that, right? So it is still about the game, but it's completely different than what I originally intended. And it's kind of what I've learned along my journey. Go with the flow, you know what I mean? If something changes, okay, just go with it, So I wanted to start with a scripture because this one came to me. I talked about it in previous talks, but this is one that seems to persist really good. You hear it all the time still, but people don't know that it's no longer that way. I went to Christian school, so of course this was a scripture we had to memorize. But you can see, judge not lest ye be judged is no longer the actual wording of it. But if you look here, you can see it's pretty much split in the middle. You'll see some of them have it right. I believe this is the current version, judge not that ye be not judged. And there's some that's kind of a mix between the two. I think this one, or what is it, judge not that you be not judged. So there's some variations, but there's a lot of the judge not lest you be judged. And what I've always done, even when I was younger, and if something stuck out to me, I would kind of just look more into it and think about it and meditate on it. And I would find that, especially in my Bible studies early on, I'd start getting stuff out of deeper meanings and stuff. So it kind of has been that way on this journey with the Mandela effect. If I notice the Mandela effect, I look into it and I get a message out of it. I've talked about it in previous talks. So I want to talk about the message I got for today because it has to do with later in this actual chapter of Matthew 7. Let me get some water. So it says not to judge, but it says here later in the chapter that you will know. So there's actually no judging needed right there. You shall know them by their fruits. Every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. So I thought about that for a while, and I was really trying to apply it to the Mandela effect at first because I thought, it's hard to judge something as good or bad right off the bat. I mean, you can say different changes upset you and that you feel like they're bad from your worldview, but if you look at what you're actually getting out of it, right? And for all of us, I think we can agree that the community and things that we've gotten out of it, there's been some positives from it, right? So I decided to come up with, using Jesus' measurement, I just decided to use the measurement of fruit that Jesus did. And everybody can kind of come up with their own list, but I figured I'm going to like describe what I feel like good fruit is to me. So I thought I'll come up with what I feel like it is and kind of come up with its opposite, right? So on the good fruit side, we have something that's edifying, nourishing, enlightening, of love, peace, and harmony. And I think this kind of ties in with, when Tom Campbell was talking about entropy. I kind of see this all together, right? So you've got harmony and you've got chaos. And you can really break it down to these two bottom ones right here. Something that's more harmonious or something that's more chaotic. Now, keep in mind, Jesus didn't, actually, I got notes that I'm not seeing at the bottom here. Okay, we'll wing it. Okay, so in Timothy, Jesus, or God, I should say, is said to do all sorts of things, right? You don't hear much about what God can't do. But in Timothy, it tells us that God has not given us the spirit of fear. I mean, so out of all the things that God does, one thing he does not do is give us fear. So if I'm picking fruit and it causes a fearful response in me, I know I'm picking rotten fruit. Right? I mean, that's what it is for me, and I guess everybody needs to decide what you consider to be good fruit or bad fruit, or what it is that you're trying to accomplish in your life, or what it is that you want to lead as a trail behind you. What kind of fruit are you as a person leaving behind? So when I applied this to the Mandela effect, because a lot of people are like, well, is it good or is it bad? And I really think it's like anything, the internet, TV, I mean, it really is what you make it. We're in the system of duality. You can take things, it's really how you take it. You can even take bad things and put a positive light on it, And so really, once you start kind of looking at the fruit of things, you start finding, it really ties right into Cynthia's how good can it get? Because now you're looking for the fruit. And for me, this Mandela effect brought community, which I felt like was a divine gathering of so many of us here that would have never met had it not been for the Mandela effect. So to me, the community that's been built from the Mandela effect is the biggest fruit for me out of the whole thing, because now we all have somebody to talk to. Now we all have somebody that can relate with us, and when a lot of our families didn't. So for me, that's definitely fruit. For me, it's also been a great awakening tool, kind of like I showed you a moment ago. I got to share it with that guy. I would recommend keeping it fun and exciting and let people draw their own conclusions from it, because they seem to be they kind of repel if you're saying your reality is ripping apart. I mean, let them figure that out if that's what's happening, you know what I mean? But if you keep it fun and exciting, like it's something cool and exciting and weird and kind of like I did with that guy there, you'll find that people's a lot more receptive to hear you and not make it a big deal, you know what I mean? Just say, oh man, it's trippy, it's neat. Have you ever heard about it? It's really trippy, and just kind of point the fact that it's a mind-blowing, trippy thing, and then let them just accept what they see as a change and not, and then kind of go into the specifics of how they might see different changes that you don't see and all of that. But if you keep it fun in the beginning, you'll find that people are a lot more receptive. For me personally, increased awareness. Since the Mandela effect happened and I began to look around, well, first, the Mandela effect, actually seeing it, I knew that it was I needed to go back to the drawing board, right? Things were not like I was told in school and everything else. So I had to go back to the drawing board, and because of that, I started looking places I would have never looked if it hadn't been for the Mandela effect prompting me to look into it. So not only my personal mission and my primary objective, but also helping people on their mission and finding out what their objective is in life. I also, since the Mandela effect, I had a lot of memories come back to me, like I've mentioned it in the previous talk, and I want to let you guys know you can check out all the previous talks on imec.world if you go to the community tab. You can actually go to the previous conferences and see everybody's talk on there. And I did do a talk on there. I mentioned in the talk about how I had this book called Milton the Early Riser when I was like 5 years old. My mom would read it to me. And it was like an archetype for my life now, right? So I've had a lot of little things that were planted years ago. I've had songs start playing in my head, and then I figure out what they are, and there's a song message behind it. And it just kind of came from nowhere, the randomness. And I tell people, you got to check out the randomness. It's not random at all. You find so much magic within, if you're going to work and something out of the ordinary happens to disrupt your trip or get your attention or something like that, that's an Easter egg. Find out what it is. Why were you delayed? A lot of times, one time I was stuck at the train, and I'm sitting there waiting for the train. I'm like, what's the deal with the train? I'm like, oh, wait. And I start looking around, start seeing these synchronicities all around me. It was like, and then the train went. It was like I knew. I was supposed to take a look around and get back in the moment. A lot of my synchronicities are like that. It pulls you back to the moment when you look at the clock and you see 11:11, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, and it brings you back to the moment. So that's really cool. So I started recognizing the perfection of my journey. And this was huge for me because this is what actually drives me now. So I really can't put enough emphasis on the perfection of the journey. But for me, it's something that you kind of got to work out for yourself. But I went through all the things in my life that seemed horrible. And I sat with it, and I faced it, like different things, like different traumas and different times I got ripped off and different times that things just didn't work out like I thought. Even my mom dying when I was 19. I started looking at all these things and started getting deeper insights into why those things happened and why it was actually perfect and how it pushed me in a direction. I mean, nobody would say their mom dying at 19 is a good thing, but for my story, it was what I needed because my mom was ultra religious. And, I wouldn't have felt like, and I'm up here preaching now, just like she wanted me to do. So it's like I have come full circle, but I needed that time as a prodigal son to like explore the world, see it differently. And I've really come full circle back to what my mom would teach me as a kid, like Jesus is in your heart. I've always been directed at the heart. And even the scriptures say, if you're in me and I'm in you and the Father's in me, we're all in one accord. So I have no problem with the way the Bible describes us as being one, and not my will, but thy will be done. I believe there's a higher consciousness that you can tap into, and I believe that's what the Mandela effect actually helped me do, because once I did that, I could see that my life was a specific, perfectly designed. I did have some free will, like in the journey, but my free will was at the level above my life. So before, and I come across this in my sessions a lot, before I came into this life, I had some things I wanted to learn in this life, and I set things up so that I'd have to live this life and learn those experiences. And it has nothing to do with when I got here what I wanted to do, and it's kind of like I figured that out all the way. So it's like by getting my heart in the right place, I was able to follow my heart into the direction I needed to go. So it's the perfection of the journey. If I feel like now, looking at where I am now, is perfectly where I needed to be, and it's not where I was aiming at all. I mean, I was aiming so many other places, but it wasn't right here. But I know, us here in this moment, this was always the plan. You see what I mean? And it's that knowing deep down inside, because I can feel it, and I tell people, trust those feelings, because that's what's guiding you. And the more you get your intentions in the right place, the more you can trust your heart. So I know I'm here by accident from my point of view, my player avatar, point of view, but I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So I take that logic and I move forward with it, and I say, you know what, I don't need to know where I'm headed. I thought I knew where I was headed before, and I didn't end up there, so why worry about where I'm headed? Why not just accept this now moment, trust that whatever guided me here with you guys that I feel is divine is going to continue to guide me. Right? And so I look for the fruit or the how good can it get, And I find that my life has turned in, like as Jerry said leading into this, I had went into this dark place where like nothing seemed, everything was just so meaningless. Even spending time with the grandkids and stuff, it's like all this just to watch them grow up and die. I was in a dark place, you know what I mean? So it was like, and then like all the connections, I was wanting deeper connections, but the deeper connections you have with people, the more it hurts when they die. And so I had to move beyond all of that. And I think I needed to hit that place where my physical body and my brain, my ego and all the things it wanted had to just sort of give up on those dreams. And it sounds like a depressing place, but once you get there and you see that there's so much better stuff where you're like, man, I've been like, this has been blocking me from my true potential. Let's see what's next. I have no idea. Okay, so yeah, in my previous talks, if you guys want to go back and watch them, I point out some of the Mandela effect changes that I experienced. and how I thought they were leading to a message. So I talked about the balance between the left and the right brain, and how we were really out of whack, the Looney Tunes, things like that. But also the T's getting chopped off. I noticed that these T's started getting chopped off, and it was like move to the right, and so I cover a lot of the different messages I got out of that. But it was really about, realizing that there is a revelation of truth that you can find in the Mandela effect. Just kind of like I did with the scripture, just kind of meditate on it and kind of see what comes into your mind with it. And I got the balance between the left and the right, and that we are all stars of our own show. I got that from the Golden Child Mandela effect, because he's always poking fun at the fact that, oh, I'm the chosen one, and he kept making jokes about it, but we really are. We're the star of our own show, and at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible for our experience of it, no matter what it's like. If you have a bad day or a good day, or what you would consider those things, how you perceive it as bad or good, is your experience of it. You can take a bad day and turn it into a good experience. Okay, so I want to get into why it's helpful to look at at life in general as a game or a cosmic movie, because it allows you to sort of break things down into what a game, all the elements of a game, like that there's a player that has strengths and weaknesses, that there's some mission or objective or script that we're following, that there's some resistance to completing your objective, some oppositional force or adversary. This would be Satan in the Bible, the adversary. Arena, venue, or stage is the place it's all going to take place. And then, of course, you have some rules, agreements, and limits. So if we use a simple game like Pac-Man, where, of course, is everybody familiar with Pac-Man? Okay, so you're this little guy right here. Your objective is to eat all the pellets here without getting eaten by the ghosts. So if you take, for a lot of like what we would typically think of as someone that's typical normal person in life, right? They might find themselves feeling like they're caught in a maze. And I love this example of Pac-Man because it kind of looks like a maze, And you're running around trying to eat these things, and you can have the perspective that these ghosts are always after me, they're evil, right? But in the game, they were actually designed to actually do what they're doing. And if you realize that you're in a game, and you realize the abilities you have, and eating the pellets in the corner that give you the advantage over the ghost, you begin to take it in a much different light, Like, man, I just zip around, if things get hairy, I'll go eat one of these things and munch them down, and you can just have a completely different experience within the same game of Pac-Man. So it's like moving from being the player, the Pac-Man here, to realizing you're the player outside the game, projecting into it, and you're way more than these 25 pixels on the screen or whatever it is. So just having your perspective, if you line out the game, if the game was designed with different elements involved, then it really doesn't matter what all the different elements are if you can realize that you're the player within it, and then you can begin to look at your strengths and weaknesses. And what will happen is you'll realize that you're not a victim, because you're actually in here designed to do what you're doing. You're perfectly designed for it. I had an experience with Know Thyself. I actually took it all out, but it was a really incredible DMT experience where my message was to know thyself. And I took that as like the divine, recognizing that we all have that seed of the divine, that flame of God, if you will, inside of us. But as I worked through all of that and the whole I am presence that's within all of us, I realized that no, it's actually saying not only that aspect of yourself, but know your character within the game. What are the things that excite you? What are your gifts and your weaknesses? Like I do art and music, so that's where I find the most joy. So I can get into my happy place by drawing a picture, creating some music. And I discussed this a little bit earlier about your heart's desire. I think people's mission and their objective, they're already doing it. It's their heart's desire, and it's just a matter of honing in on what it is in your heart that is drawing you. And this kind of ties into like flavor. I didn't really get into that here. A lot of this stuff is on my channel, and I've covered some of it, so you can go in a little bit deeper. But this is kind of just a summary of the whole thing. But the heart's desire is a big one, because people were like, well, I thought I met my twin flame, and and I acted on my heart, and I'm like, well, it's not really like what your heart is pulling you to if you're not in the right place in your intentions. You know what I mean? So I think for me, I had to get my intentions right. I had to get my own stuff in order to really be able to trust where I felt my heart was leading me. But there is a way of discerning. And I found that what I was just showing you with the fruit is actually a good way to discern that. I mean, if you apply that fruit measurement that Jesus talks about to your job, to your relationship, you'll figure out if your relationship's toxic in a hurry, right? You're like, is it toxic? Am I getting some good out of it? Am I feeling fulfilled at my job? Or do I just come home feeling run down every day? Is it fruitful, in more than just money, So when you recognize that there is some sort of natural resistance or oppositional force, you can let the fear go. You can realize that the fear is just a gatekeeper to keep you from greater things. And the example I like to use is going out of body. My first time having an out-of-body experience in my sleep, and I had sleep paralysis. It was right when I first found out about the Mandela effect. It was 2017, and my whole body was vibrating. I tried to roll over to wake my wife up, and as soon as I went to touch her, I was back in my original spot. I'm like, what's going on? I kept rolling over like 5 times, and I kept rolling on my body. I finally got up, went over, I'm feeling on the walls. I'm feeling on the walls, and I noticed that they're there, but then I pop back into my body again. And I tell you what, the line of things I came up with of what was happening to me, oh man, the government saw my YouTube videos, man. They're beaming me with something, right? I got people like, it's a psychic attack. I hear this one all the time. If you're feeling some kind of attack and you start thinking you're being psychically attacked, it can take you to a dark place really quick. But realizing that you're a capable sovereign being, the player in the game with everything you need to handle whatever it is, all the pieces are there, just like a game. If it sends you, if you're playing a game and it sends you on a hunt to find 3 items, they're going to be there somewhere. Nobody makes a game and doesn't put all the pieces in it, you know what I mean? So it's like once you kind of have that understanding that our whole reality is actually constructed in a way that nothing's actually random, not from a certain level anyway. Everything's orchestrated. And then your personal, once you see that there's an agreement, there's something you're trying to accomplish, there's actually a point where you realize that your failures are actually your stepping stones. How many of you, now that you've sort of started waking up, have memories that come back about things you did that really make you cringe? Has anybody been dealing with that? I've been dealing with that a lot lately, and I'm like, why do I feel so dang cringy? I want to let those feelings go. But then, it came to me, the fact that you're feeling that is why you're not a jerk anymore. It's why you don't do those things anymore. I learned from my mistakes. So if you're feeling that, if you're feeling those cringy feelings, embrace those feelings, because those feelings are because you learned your lesson and you've moved on, and you're not that person, so you don't need to feel cringy about it anymore. Be glad that you don't have to feel cringy or do that exact thing anymore anyway. We'll probably always do cringy stuff, right? Yeah, I have them all along my way too. So what I noticed that the more I'm able to let go and sort of trust that I'm going in the direction I need to go, and I just need to sort of get the clues, right? Pick up on where I'm supposed to be heading and get in the flow. Go through those open doors. Realize if a door closed, it's not because the devil did it to me anymore, right? I used to think that. I'm like, I got to keep pushing, man. The devil's trying to stop me. But I went through all that, But when you get through the game and you're going with the flow and you don't have that resistance and the fear goes away, you can get in the flow that's more like a dance. It's more like you're dancing. And think about it. Life is really like a dance. It's like, because it's not about the final pose, right? It's about that, it's like art. It's the ultimate art, right? For me, like doing my art, my music and everything, not only is it the journey, but, the finished product is also a reminder of that journey. And it's a reminder of being in the flow and going to that place. So I want to really encourage everyone to find out what your flow is, what really drives you. Some people just like to talk to people, Some people like to garden, and there's all sorts of art sorts of things that you can do, right brain creative things that you can do that will allow you to be more in touch with where your heart is actually trying to lead you. Okay, so one of the things that comes up a lot in my sessions with people is moving them through the death process into them looking back at the previous life that we're visiting. And when they're looking back on their life, they the things that we think of as important, like winning an argument or getting a debate or things like that, are the least of what I hear. It's like what you hear people say is like, why did I let that come between us? Why did I ruin a relationship because of losing a debate or somebody saying something cross with me or you know, just little regrets like that. But it's a little instance in time that destroys a relationship over a much longer period of time. And most people look at those little instances in these life review processes and think, that was so stupid. Why did I cause that disruption in that relationship for that? So what I've decided to do actually in my own life, after having this happen so many times, is to get in life review mode all the time. So as I interact with everybody in my life, I act like, in my mind, I see this like, because that's, you know, you can't go back and change it in the real life review. It's like you're looking at it, and as much as you want to go change it and do it differently, you can't. So this tool right here for me has worked wonders, because now when I'm in situations, I take the view of looking at it as if I'm in life review mode already, you know, and I take it and then I can see what's important. And all of a sudden, I'm not really in the conversation anymore. I'm looking at this conversation taking place, and I'm seeing how I'm responding to it, and I'm making sure my response is something I can live with, you know, because when you look at it that way, you'll see that up here is the love level, right? If we're discussing things down here, the ultimate thing is love. So if this moves up into this area and starts disrupting the love that you feel, the connection, the harmony like we talked about, then it's counterproductive, you know? It's better to just love the person and let them be where they're at, you know? And they'll come around. A lot of the people came around. Like my wife wasn't on board, you know, 30 years. She wasn't on board for the first few, and then like after a few years, I just kind of letting her go and doing my own thing and not really shoving it down her throat too much. I would bring them up. I can't help it. I got to bring them up. What about this one? You remember this one? Like, oh, okay, no problem. But yeah, we had some really strong ones together that, like, you know, made me like, is this the same woman? I mean, we listened to Sarah McLachlan before bed, McLaughlin, I should say, but it was spelled like McLaughlin then, and I was like, saying, remember we were trying to figure out when we first found her how to pronounce her name, and because people would say McLaughlin, and we had this long discussion about it, and she didn't remember it. So it like kind of annoyed. There would be little things that annoyed me that it's like we had this conversation and you just don't even remember it. But her reality, her experience was completely different. Maybe she just didn't care or something, you know. So yeah, so we had different things like that, but I just let it go, you know, and then even though her eyes got this big when I showed her the JFK car that was in color with 6 people in it, she saw it, you know, even though she kind of like sunk back after that moment. But I let her go, you know, and then before I knew it, she's like on the Mandela Effect Researchers on Facebook, you know, showing me stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, saw that a couple years ago, you know, but you know, it's cool because everybody does get it. And even in the example of the guy I met at the ashram and I'm telling him about it, he, you know, how did this guy duck and dodge all the downloads until 2023? You know what I mean? To remember the JFK like I remember it. It's like, where have you been? You know? But for a lot of people, they'll bring something up. Like, oh my God, did you know whatever? And it's like, man, that happened to me like 5 years ago. So I have, with all my talking to all the people, I have noticed people see things at different times. And it's like they see different changes. They'll see them at different times. And it really is, you know, there's not really one objective reality that I believe in. I really believe that everybody's like in their own experience. And I even believe science lately has come out with things to point towards the fact that there's no objective reality. It very much is your own experience. And so let's see what we got here. How am I looking on time?
We got about 15 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so one of the things that helped me on my journey in dealing with different people in different situations was I got this from the Wingmakers material. It's called the 6 Heart Virtues. And you can go through them, appreciation, compassion, forgiveness, humility, understanding, and valor. But if you apply these to things that you're having trouble with, relationships, and you learn to find the appreciation in different situations, I found that it like puts you on a different frequency when you try to just put things through this filter right here, you know. And I started doing this, and I couldn't believe how good it worked. This is actually what I was doing that led up to the whole life review thing that I do now. So I would take something like someone I'm having a difficulty with. Maybe if you guys read about the Fauci book, right? So you can read a book like that and be kind of disturbed at the character in the book and think, you know, how am I supposed to love this person, right? Because it's easy to love your family, but, you know, it's harder to love someone who you feel might be responsible for the death of your loved one, maybe, right? So when I went into deep meditation with this, I saw Fauci as Fauci, a boss level to the game, a boss in the game, sort of an adversary, if you will. Like I talked about, there's some kind of adversary. But what I also saw in this board meeting was everyone designing him to bring about an awakening. So when I looked at the man himself, he looks like this horrible guy. But when I saw what he brought about from the things he was doing, it was good things that was coming out of it. So this was another way that I was able to find appreciation in a monster, basically, because what he does, we're in a dualistic world, right? So everything you do is going to have, you know, what you can consider good or bad results. That's why I think it's good to look at the fruit of it, right? Okay, so know thyself. In my experience, I didn't know it at the time when I had my experience with DMT, and it was a breakthrough experience where I didn't know who I was or anything. And this was after I found out about the Mandela effect, by the way, just so you don't think that I ruined my brain on DMT. You never know. Like, it was the DMT caused the Mandela effect. Actually, I wouldn't doubt something like that because it can be like a near-death experience for a lot of people. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people that sort of woke up to the Mandela effect after some type of journey. For those that don't know, DMT is a naturally occurring compound in the brain. It's dimethyltryptamine, but you can also find it throughout the plant and animal kingdom in all various forms, but also within the brain. And it's said that it's released during near-death experiences and like as you're falling asleep. And once I tried it, I actually noticed the DMT tunnel as I was falling asleep one night. I was like, oh my God, there's that tunnel. No. So you don't get to see it usually. And I wouldn't have known if I hadn't known what it looked like. But when I had my breakthrough experience and came back, I heard Know Thyself. And that's sort of what led me on that whole journey I was just talking about actually figuring out, once you really grasp this whole Know Thyself thing, you'll turn your focus inward because you'll realize like how much you really don't know about yourself and your weaknesses and your strengths, or how to just, you know, navigate through this world, you know, and the best way to do that. And once you start looking at yourself as the character and that you're in this perfectly designed game for yourself, your job is really to enjoy the experience of it. I mean, you can't, that's really all you have at the end of the day is to accept the now moment just like it is. Whatever you're dealing with, you can't change what's right before you, but you can change how you look at it. You know, so really that's the message I have for the day: to find the fruit of life, and I want to leave more time for questions too, if we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Robinson. Great job, brother. Great job. All right, if you have questions, of course, go ahead and line up right over here. Tet, ready when you are, bud.
How's it going, Shane?
Hey, Tet.
You're an artist. You not only create visual art, but you create sound.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do this, you sort of leave this world where you are creating something that wasn't there before. And you have to ask this question, you know, am I a player? You know, like your version is, hey, you're playing the game, this is how you play, this is how you do this.
Right.
My question to you is, how do you know when you, and others sometimes, are ready to leave the realm of game playing and become the game maker? Where you now make the game, where you create.
Right.
And is there an avenue, like when, I mean, I'm also a piano player.
Right.
And so there's that moment where you got the sheet music where they just go, play,
Right.
just play. And you don't know what to do because you don't have the guide, you don't have the book. So my question is, like, when are you ready to have that book taken away and create and be the maker instead of the player?
That's a great question. I've actually been the kind of person that I learned art and music by ear. So I've never been that person to really. Actually, I went for a bachelor's in media arts and animation, but it was just for the degree. I actually was an artist and everything already. So you want to?
Yeah, no. It's the reason that I asked that is because a lot of us, and we use religious texts, we use religious books. Like your story of the prodigal son is what really made me want to ask this question.
Right.
It's like, how do you know when someone's in that prodigal moment where they're like, don't talk to me, I need to go through my crap, da-da-da-da, and then that moment where they're ready, where they're ready to start going into flow. They're ready to start being that maker.
I think a lot of it's more automatic than we think, really, you know. And I think, and there's an example I use a lot of someone say they feel like, I don't know, like say they start getting all these signs and synchronicities, they're supposed to move to Florida, you know. And it's like there could be someone that experienced all those same things, but they didn't, sort of attach that meaning to it. So I think you kind of get to a point where you're really going with the flow whether you realize it or not. Kind of like I said, I ended up here automatically. I was always on the journey. I just didn't have an awareness that I was on the journey. And I think that it's like that for everybody. It's like you're on your journey. So I feel like life's kind of like a river, right? If there is some splits in it, it was designed in there. So I don't feel like, you're so much carving a path beyond what your original intention on the higher levels was for your game, your specific journey. But you do have, you can move around, you can get off on the side and scrape yourself on the rocks, or you can be in the middle and go with the flow and just enjoy the scenery as you go where you're going to end up anyway. So for me, it's more of an automatic thing, and realizing, having the awareness that it's always been the plan,
Own your path.
Own your path, yeah. And really trust the fact that there is some divine force that's guiding you. And it won't guide you astray. It will, once you tap into that heart place and your intentions are right, I feel like it'll guide you right every time,
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you,
Thank you, Ted. Chris, go ahead. You're next up.
Hey, Shane, your presentation was great. I really loved it. So my question is going to be shocking for everyone, about fruit. So we started the day with Jerry talking about exploding fruit, exploding watermelons, and then John was talking about the reversal of fruit from Enoch chapter 80. And I think it's really interesting too, because in my presentation yesterday I was talking about fruit, Fruit of the Loom, Fruit Loops, and the whole concept of frequency repeats of original timelines. And I noticed that you used the JFK assassination at the beginning of your presentation. And I think that's the perfect example. It was shot on 8mm film. And we don't just have like one particular like Mandela effect. It was just 4 people in the car, then 6. But there's a continual progression. I actually remember 3 people in the car being black and white, then 4 in color, and then 6. And then now that you always used to be just the Zapruder film, and now there's like literally 5 other films, including another one where they shot it from the book depository, including you could hear the gunshots. So like there's more and more of a progression that seems to be illustrating how timelines work. So, we're talking about fruit and so forth. I wanted to know if you feel like, because we're all seeing synchronicities, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to see like how you felt about, is maybe fruit the topic of this particular conference? I don't know.
I love that question. Thank you so much, Chris. And I've been noticing the synchronicities with the fruit since I got here. And the funny thing is the fruit part is the part that I added in at the last. That like, you got to stick all this fruit stuff. I'm like, that's kind of getting fruity, Check out the other stuff. But yeah, I've noticed lots of synchronicities, and just the fact that I think fruit, that is it, because we judge so much. But you can just know, like Jesus said, you can just know. Just look at what kind of fruit are you getting out of it. If it's not the kind of fruit you want, It's rotten fruit to you for your journey if you feel like it's rotten fruit. So I feel like everybody's idea of fruit's different too, I kind of gave my little list, but if your list is like, whatever, you just put it out there.
So beware of the exploding fruit.
Right.
Well,
Taste the rainbow, right?
There was 2 themes we've had so far, love and fruit. So is it a passion fruit? Is that what we got to watch out for next? Should we be watching the passion fruit, ladies and gentlemen?
Your presentation, going back to what she was saying about the numbers 3, your presentation was over the time period 333.
Oh,
333.
wow, yeah, it sure was. That's awesome. I love that. I didn't look down, though.
You can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. That is awesome.
Thanks for the presentation. It was great.
Thank you.
I just want to share a synchronicity my friend and I had this morning. We were talking about Pac-Man and the whole dynamic of being in a maze, and that we talked about it. Well, I talked about it on and on and on. So it kind of got anchored in today, and then just seeing it was really fun. So
Thank
just
you
wanted
so
to share
much
that
for
synchronicity.
Thanks so much for that.
You can't make this stuff up.
You can't.
There's
I
no
should
way
have had
you
some
could-
cherries on there, man.
Right?
Got the wrong screenshot. I missed the mark a little bit, I guess.
Cynthia, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like you to talk about the perfection of the journey. I know you brought it up, and my specific question has to do with knowing ourselves and the awareness. I often think in terms of levels of conscious agency. Mm-hmm. And the awareness that we can access high self. Well, we know we've got heart consciousness, we've got gut feelings, and then we can focus on what we're visualizing. But then, I love the way you referred to this idea that sometimes it's like there's a guiding force. There's this level. Would you call it or do you relate to that idea, levels?
Yeah,
of agency. And how does that tie in for you with the idea of perfection? And not thy will, not my will, but thy will.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually have reached this point now. Thank you for the question, Cynthia. I've reached this point now where I feel like if I can't see the perfection in it, it's only my own lack of awareness of seeing the whole picture just from within the game. So I do feel like there's a level where it's all actually perfect, absolutely perfect. Like you can see a perfectly running engine, but if you get in there, you're going to see some explosions and some pressures and a lot of, things that can seem chaotic, but the engine's purring like a kitten, right? So I think there is that level of we're in this well-oiled machine. It's a consciousness machine, if you will, and we're kind of just playing out the whole what if of God. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I view it. And I feel like it all is perfect at some level, and it's just the awareness of that is all that's missing, really. And it's sort of just getting in your groove, You have a follow-up?
Yeah, just thank you. And so it's kind of like, how good can it get? I often think, how good can I get? How God can I get? And so really bringing that in. Thank
I love
you so
that.
much.
And it's really all about the fruit, It's like at the end of the day, what kind of fruit did I bring in? What kind of fruit did I enjoy? Was it rotten fruit? Because we allow in the rotten fruit or the fresh fruit. That's really, at the end of the day, we're the one that choose the fruit we pick. Or if we decide to focus on the thorn or the thistle, like Jesus talked about,
Right.
What are you going to focus on? The fruit? I mean, we have another way I like to look at it is if you have your flashlight of your attention and you're down in the basement and you see some cruddy things and you see some beautiful things, it's really what you're shining your light on and putting your attention on. And if there's beautiful things, why are you looking at, a pile of dog poop or something? I don't know, That's kind of how I see it.
And for your tips for people that think they are under that psychic attack, because you sort of glanced right off that, is there anything deeper that you want to add?
Yeah, I try to let people realize their own sovereignty and realize that your connection with God can't be taken by any man. I'm not about the, some people feel like there could be some kind of soul trap that you can't escape. I feel like if there's some kind of trap, it's more like being captured by your imagination. So you're trying to get somebody to go hey, we need to go or whatever, and they're captivated with the TV. It's that sort of thing. You can move your attention away from whatever it is. You're not captured any more than you want to be captured or any more than you believe. So if you believe like you're in a prison planet, you're going to experience that. So I do believe that our reality is interactive, and you'll get things to verify what you think. So if you think somebody's psychically attacking you, you'll start seeing people looking at you and people with their bright lights on and somebody's shining lights in my windows. It just snowballs. So I say understand your own sovereignty your own power that comes from God, and nobody can take that away, and nobody can interrupt that. You know what I mean? Not
Ladies and
ultimately.
gentlemen, the fruit vendor. I'm kidding.
With the cornucopia.
Wait, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong timeline. My fault. Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Robinson.